Bank,
Oh
having a
yeah, for
buffer.
sure. Like having a buffer is very, very useful, and I think everybody should have that. 6 months, 12 months, whatever your number might be, whatever makes you feel secure, you need that. But any finances on top of that, if they're sitting in the bank, they're actually costing you money. They're actually costing you because those resources could have been better utilized elsewhere. They could have been spent in your marketing. They could have been spent in resources like your capital for equipment. It could have been spent in having a videographer. It could have been spent having an accountant. Like one of the most impactful things for me was outsourcing my accounting and bookkeeping to an accountant and a bookkeeper. It's so simple, but the young, naive, hoarding Eugene was like, oh, that's like $200 a month. Don't spend that. You got to hang on to that money. But that $200 a month, it's so cheap when you think about how much it allows you to not have to worry about your accounts, not have to worry about your taxes or making your BAS statements or whatever it is, because it's all been taken care of. Like they're running the numbers, and if there's an anomaly, they'll come back and tell me, hey, you should keep an eye on this, whatever else it might be. But spending that. And so for all those years that I was so consumed with hoarding and saving more money that I didn't necessarily need, and not spending it or investing it, I should say, in an accountant and a bookkeeper, it was costing me mental space. It was costing me mental space. So as soon as I started making those decisions and that transition, then I said to myself, or then I started to realize that that exact same conundrum on a bigger scale of any extra money above your base living expenses and safety net, what can I be putting it towards? And how can that not necessarily make me more money, but how can that allow me to do what I really love to do? I would love to be able to create a space, literally just like this, where I can, one thing, train, where I can create the most exceptional content ever, and just have fun doing it. Like, the monetary side of it hasn't really crossed my mind as much as people would think that it would. It's more so like, I just love being able to think of an idea and then action it straight away. Where, for example, we're filming a YouTube video, Cavan's editing it, and he says, you know what, Eugene, you know what's missing from this shot right now? We don't have a video of you squatting with a bar on your back. And in the past, I'd be like, shit, now we've got to go drive to the gym. We've got to film that. You know what? Let's not even do it. And then we'll skip that. And then the content still gets put out. But you know, in the back of your mind, it could have been better. And not from a perfectionist standpoint, although it is kind of from that, but also from that you know that if the entertainment, if the engagement, if the value was there, more people will enjoy it. They'll see it, they'll watch it, they'll share it. And most importantly then, when it gets shared, the content, the value is being spread. And that's what's important to me is I want to see a lot of what you share. I want to see a lot of what's out there being put forward on a more global scale, where it's not just reserved for the high-end PT who wants to learn about and nerd out about biomechanics, but I want it to be infiltrated out there in an entertaining way, in an appealing way. And the only way you can do that is not through staying on your ivory tower and pumping out nerdy journals, so making this stuff entertaining and engaging for people. And that's where this setting really started to come to fruition. We're saying this is what I need to do and I want to do. And of course, it was also a big time saver because I don't have to drive between 4 different gyms now, which is what it was for me. Like I would train back at a certain gym for the certain machines, legs another one for another machine, chest another one, because I care about those little things. And again, you can say that's excessive, Eugene, but you understand it. And it kind of comes with this this burden of knowledge where you can't unsee something. When you know that something is less than optimal using a certain machine or a bar or whatever, you're like, you can't justify staying on that machine when you know there's a better one around the corner.
Well, it's time, right? Like, and I want to double back to that later, but so we've done financially viable last year during your tour, conceptually viable 2014, 2015.
Yeah.
When you went to your guidance counselor in high school, what did you tell them you wanted to do for a living?
I had no clue. And they, like, we did the assessments. We did the school, like, you do this aptitude tests or whatever it is. And it came out as an actuary. I had no idea what an actuary was.
I still don't know what that is.
It's something with numbers and math and statistics. I don't know. I think they just guessed that I was Asian and said, he must be numbers. There you go. But like for the longest time, for most of my life, most of my youth, I had no concept of who I really was, what I really cared about, what drove me, what makes me tick, What are my boundaries? What do I like? What do I dislike? So I would pick subjects in high school thinking of what are my friends doing? I made my selections into what courses I want to go to in university based on what my parents wanted, typical Asian, and also based on where my friends were going. Like, oh, okay, they're all doing this business over at Melbourne Uni. I'm going to tick that as well. And then when it came down to choosing subjects at university, like, oh, where are my friends going? Because I didn't really care about it. I didn't really know that you could choose. Like, if I went back to high school knowing what I knew now, I would have actually done science. I would have done biology. I would have done chemistry. I would have done physics. I did none of that because I didn't know that that the decisions you make then can guide a lot of your future, which is ironic what they tell you in school. They say, make the right decisions now. It's going to carry you for life. But I made none of those decisions because I had no one telling me how to think. Everybody was telling me what to think. My high school system was very, very good at teaching me, here's how to nail the exam. I was incredible at rote learning, at studying a textbook, writing it out, and not understand, but being able to copy it and regurgitate it. That was my skill, which is great for exams. But it doesn't teach you how to be a very, very sound individual in terms of like actual personal development. So I spent much of those first few years just sort of floating through, just doing whatever force was pushing me into. And then at some point, I can't exactly say when it was, but I started to really, really connect with this craft of not just training or bodybuilding, but of sharing and imparting value upon people, creating a connection more than anything else. And as much as we like to nerd out and talk about biomechanics, training, and all of these really cool things about powerlifting and bodybuilding, this is the language that we use to create connections. This is how we connect with people, and at the crux of what drives human behavior more than anything else is a desire to feel important and a desire to seek connection. That is why social media is so addictive, because you feel connected. You're creating these connections all the time with the double tap or with whatever else, sharing shit with your friends and making a post on Instagram. You feel like you're part of something. Well, that social media drug for me is not social media. It is creating stuff like this. Like knowing that I can create an incredible YouTube video and it's going to impact thousands of people very positively and they're going to enjoy that. That's a connection point. And that's what drives my decision-making behavior now, is because I don't need to worry about that money anymore. Like, always should worry about money. You should always have that in your mind, be frugal in what you're doing. Like, I live well within my means all the time. But apart from that, I say, what's going to make me happy? What do I really care about? What do people care about? It's connections, creating strong relationships. It's building those relationships, fostering them, nurturing them. And it just so happens that for me, the way that I do that is through talking about training. Same as you. You do that by talking about training, talking about mechanics, talking about rehabilitation, talking about all these things is your language. Just like a musician plays their instrument to be able to communicate with their audience, connect with their audience, that's what we do, but with a slightly different vessel.
What were some like pivotal resources for you to heighten that awareness of like, look, this is actually what's going on behind the scenes? Like, I mean, I couldn't imagine, like I could rattle off like a bunch of books on anatomy and biomechanics that we probably both read.
Yeah.
But I think the biggest differences that we see in people who have that awareness that this is an integral part of that communication. And because they don't teach you that in school, they teach you the opposite of that in school. What for you, whether it books, whether it mentors, what really drove the ship for you towards that? Okay, here's my vessel of communication, but here's the subtext that I actually want to relay.
It was two unrelated things, although in some way they are related. First of all, the most obvious was the amount of teaching that I was doing. Like at that point, I was, this is like the start of 2018, so most of 2018, I had an event on pretty much every single week, sometimes twice a week. I'd be doing some kind of a teaching workshop to coaches. And the more you teach this stuff, eventually the actual content becomes, it's just language to you, like it's just how you talk. You don't have to think at all about what the next line is. You know when you're going to make a joke. You know when you're going to talk about this subject, it's going to have a lot of raised eyebrows. It's going to create a lot of cognitive dissonance in people. You can expect it after maybe doing this 5 or 6 times in a row. Like you sort of pick up the patterns. So the first part of the year was all about that. It was just me getting used to my content material, making sure I really understood it back to front and understand the audience. And then the last part of the 6 months of 2018, because I didn't think at all about the script, I didn't think at all about the content because I didn't have to. Instead, what I started noticing was I was focusing more on my delivery. I was focusing more on refining the communication and how to control the crowd, how to make sure that they were staying entertained, make sure they were staying attentive, making sure that they were opening up and honestly just becoming open to accept the information. Because the big part that people don't realize when it comes to teaching is it's not just you standing up there saying, here's what you need to know. It's also about unlearning what they currently know. Or maybe not unlearning because it's incorrect, but at least opening up that door to be open to accepting new information. Where a lot of people don't realize it because they're not consciously doing it, but subconsciously they have mental blocks. They have their own individual emotions and biases that get in the way of them being able to accept new information. And as a teacher, as an educator, that is the biggest roadblock you're going to encounter, is how do you help somebody understand that? Because people only ever be able to accept the information you teach them and understand it up to their current level of understanding. If somebody doesn't really have enough of a broad context, they're going to keep their walls up. Like with functional movement or powerlifting, if all they know is powerlifting, if that's their one background, their one bit of understanding, trying to tell them that a bench press, or trying to tell them that a cable press is better than a bench press in certain contexts, of course you're going to be met with resistance. And they're not trying to be a dick. They're not trying to be arrogant and shut you down. It's because their level of understanding is only powerlifting as their background. And your role as an educator is how do I level up their understanding more so they understand a bit more about biomechanics, they understand a bit more about physics, they understand a little bit more about the specificity of bench press versus cable press, and they understand the contexts of certain goals and certain clients. Now you've leveled up their understanding, now they've taken away the walls, the barriers to learning information. Now when you tell them the statement of, I would use a cable press, not a bench press, now there's no more resistance. So bridging all those gaps together was what I spent a lot of the last 6 months of 2018 really refining. Because that is more than content. That's not you just saying, here's the humerus, here's the origin, here's the insertion, here's the action, here's the function. It is literally about how do you get into someone's brain hole? How do you work out and understand and honestly empathize with their biases? Because that powerlifter with their smaller perspective, they're not bad people. They're not incorrect. They're not arrogant. Although the old me would have seen them as that, like, why are you talking back to me? I'm teaching you something. It's just they don't have the same lens or the same perspective. So I need to be able to put myself into their mind to understand their perspective and where they're currently at. And then I can talk to them, I can teach them, I can connect with them. And creating those connections, then I found just how important that was. Connections and communication. And not just knowing your content back to front, but knowing people back to front. And that was through those, 6 to 9 months, that is when I spent so much more time just being obsessed with breaking down post-workshop with myself. Not where did I nail the right exercise or the right cue or the right presentation. I said, where did I slip up with my miscommunication? Where did I not help convince or help this person understand the content, the concepts well enough? Or where did I do it really well? And I found the better I got at doing that, the better I got at communicating. And then people became fascinating to me, like interactions, relationships, talking to people on the street. It just became so enjoyable and exciting because it's literally like leveling up in a game. It's like, I understand how to empathize with this person. I understand how to talk to the guy at the service station who just filled up my gas tank. I know how to connect with these people and try to empathize with them, understand their perspective, and communicate with them. And that was a very big step for me because I'm someone who asked me 2-3 years ago, I would identify as an introvert. I would say I'm the kind of person who put me in a social setting, it's exhausting, I get anxiety, I need to just spend some time on my own to recharge. Like that's a typical definition of an introvert, where the extrovert gets energy from other people. They need to be in these high energy environments with a lot of people because they soak up that energy, otherwise they feel really, really flat. And then I started to have this other thought of, do real introverts, by that definition, where they get exhausted from social interactions, and they need some time away to recharge their batteries, do they really exist? Or is that more of an excuse that people, including myself, that people put out there to rationalize and justify their inability to connect with people? And the reason why they feel so drained after those experiences is because they're spending a lot of time in this dissonant state in their brain, trying to manage their emotions of anxiety, trying to work out how to communicate better. And really, the introverts don't really exist. They're just people who don't understand how to communicate and connect as effectively. And that, again, this is the end of one study for myself, but when I got better at that, now I crave that interaction where I would now identify a lot more on those random arbitrary definitions, more of an extrovert, where after interaction, after spending a long day with somebody or spending time in an event, I'll be hopped up. I'll be so excited, so happy, and I've got to calm myself down. Where a couple of years ago, I'd be like, I cannot wait to be done. I cannot wait to go into my shell and curl up on a ball and cry. I've done too much people this week. I'm going to spend the next month in isolation, in my little hub. But now, people and connections are what us as humans, this is not even about training, this is what human nature is, what we crave, it's what we need. That's what drove me to keep, and then I've realized I got better and better and better at overcoming the barriers that used to exist in my mind of getting my message across, communicating with people, and then honestly, it's become so much happier. Okay, so much more happier. No matter what would happen in life, I could always find a way to bounce back from it because I would honestly never really get down by these kinds of interactions. I could understand the other person's perspective. If I went through a relationship breakdown, yeah, I'm sad it ended, but I'm also understanding their perspective. I'm understanding why it broke down the way it did, and I come out of it for the better, and I hope that my partner, she came out of it for the better when things dissolve. And there's only happiness there. There's only happiness there because you're like, this is just a positive way to live life. Not for the sake of being positive, but just because you start to realize, yeah, that ended, but it was a really good learning opportunity for me. Now I'm leveled up. Now I know the next time that I get into a relationship, or even just with a friend, I know a better way to navigate that and how to connect and look out for certain red flags that may have been there that I didn't address in the past. And it literally is as addictive as a game. Of like, now I've got a new set of skills to start to work on. So that was like a big point for me, just like learning all of that through just teaching.
In that transition, because I feel the same way, and we chatted the other day about like how draining it can be to be on, like run 3-day course, like 4-day course, and you're on because you want to give your energy to other people, but if you're blind to that energy that they're giving back, then that'll drain you, right? Because it's all output, no input. But it's like if you can have that as a receptor, as a mechanism, as a utility to feed back off the energy that this room, and there's more of them than you, right? And so I almost look at it like fiber type training, which is a really like nerdy vibe, right? Because of course, where it's like, the slow twitch muscle doesn't have to be a slow twitch muscle. We can train it and expose it to this state when we can actually start to transition the amount of slow versus fast twitch fibers in this particular muscle.
Right.
Now, how much of that, because I know for me in the transition from, look, man, like these things were draining. Because I do the same thing, like debrief after a seminar, debrief after a conversation, like being able, like I put up something the other day, like one of my favorite quotes is, all of humanity's problems exist in man's inability to sit alone in his room with his own thoughts. And I did a lot of that. I had a lot of time. When you're on the road, man, like it's like if you're on the road by yourself, you don't know isolation like that. Yeah. Like this Corona stuff, like isolation, like that's nothing, man. Like when you're in a country where, I was in Lebanon and just like, fuck it. Like, why not? I was homeless. I was like, all right, I'll go to Lebanon and figure it out there. Where it's like, you don't know the language. You end up on the wrong bus. You're in Syria. Like, you're getting stopped by, like, Hezbollah checkpoints. Your phone doesn't work. There's no one to call. And you're in, like, a hostile church as an Airbnb. You're like, fuck, this is isolation. But then that forced you to, like, that's when I started to make that transition. But for me, what I realized was what was draining, it was a fear component. And that, because public speaking is a fear. Right? And is that something you ever ran into and had to overcome in that transition of introvert to extrovert, like the fear of it? And what was it that did it for you?
Yeah. So again, like when I first started teaching, like I look back at some of my first ever events this was like in my big box commercial gym, doing like little free weekend seminars on female fat loss and all those buzz kinds of things. it was terrible from a presenter standpoint because I was not engaging. I was so shell-shocked by this fear of public speaking. But then I really resonate with that. Like when you are on the road on your own, like you're probably one of the only other people who I know personally who can actually relate with that. Is it's sink or swim. It's adapt or die. It's you learn how to back yourself and believe in yourself and start having, this true self-belief that I can get better. And you start to realize that, the more I do this, just through repetition, repetition, you get better and better and better and better at doing this. And you start to realize all those fears that you had, they weren't actually fears. It was just lack of training. Like, if you tell me, hey, Eugene, we need to squat 200 kilos now, I'm going to be pretty fucking terrified. Okay, like I know you can do it, but I know I'll be fucking scared of that because I haven't done that in about 5 or 6 years. Because I know that, I'm not trained for it. But if I had the training for it, if you told me that in 6 months' time, after 6 months of us working together in a powerlifting contest, I'd be like, let's do it. Everything in life is repetitions. Everything in life is reps, sets, volume, intensity, frequency. So people actually, that's what I love about training so much, is there are so many parallels to draw into life from that. People come to me a lot about things like, how do you create more content? Where does inspiration come from? How do you know what to write? I don't know what to write. I got writer's block. And I say, well, actually heard this from, I think it was Seth Godin. He's one of these marketing gurus. He said, do you ever get talking block? Do you ever get talker's block? Like, no, you don't. Why not? Because you're doing it every single day. It's a repetition. And your body doesn't just you have a mental block from talking, but what it does have is it has a mental block from writing for a lot of writers because people aren't doing it every single day. So it's going to be uncomfortable when you first start doing it, for sure. When I first start training in the gym, it's going to be uncomfortable. But you just got to get over that hump. Just like when the person first comes into the gym, they're going to be sore for a few days. They're going to be a little bit less trainable at first. But you keep doing those reps, and you have to believe in the process. And then, of course, the most important thing is not just the belief in the process, but enjoying the process. It's like I enjoy the process of putting myself out there, doing these events, coming back and reflecting and saying, how could I have made that better? How can I understand this more? And that literally, like in this kind of context, it comes down to, do you really enjoy what you do with training? Do you really enjoy the craft? If there were no crowds, if there was no Instagram, if there was none of this stuff, would you still be in the gym? I know you would be. I know that I would be. I know a lot of people wouldn't be. Like, we would still be training. And because of that love of the process, of experimentation, I'm asking, hey, why do you put your arm up here? Why do you put your hand on the bench? Like, I'm asking you that stuff because I'm genuinely fascinated. I'm so curious about learning this kind of stuff. I can't say that about every single person that I've encountered in the industry, because for them, being in the industry is a means to an end. It's an easy way to make some money. It's a simple job that they can do. It's low barrier to entry. They can, great, whoop-de-doo. But that's not enough for us in that sense. So because of that, that enjoyment of the process, away from the spotlight, that's what allows me to keep getting those reps in. And then the more I learn, the more I want to share it with people, the more I want to teach with people. And that then puts me into that position where I just want to explain it on social media. I want to explain it in a workshop. I want to explain it to a friend. I want to help them out in whatever way that I can. And then that's the repetitions that helps you get over, or that helped me get over the introversion. They helped me get over the fear of public speaking. And it gave me the confidence to say, you know what? I know at this point in time, to the best of my ability, that this is the best thing for the person, and I'm so excited to be able to share it with them. I'm going to do it. And then I start to block out, or not even block out, but all those fears dissolve because I've trained for it. I've trained for it for however long it's been. And it wasn't the forced exposure of training. Like, you didn't have a gun to my head to make me do those repetitions. I was enjoying every single step of the way because I was so excited to learn about why you put your arm there, why you hug the bench, you didn't grab onto the handles, that kind of stuff. I'm just fascinated by.
Now, what's the new frontier? Right, like that can be a lonely place, man. Like when you realize that, you know, all of a sudden this thing that was fearful, you sit with it, you meditate on it, you figure out what it is that you're actually afraid of. You get in the reps and sets, you get the exposure. Now you get to enjoy and appreciate because you've transcended that fear. Now you can get up in front of a crowd, you can get up in front of a camera. But now, like, in knowing the amount of growth that came in transcending that fear, what's the new horizon? What's the new frontier where you need to embark on something again fearful? that you're fearful of to expose and grow. What's next? Like, how do you, this is comfy, bro. Like, this is, like, we're talking, this is like, where did you get this? This is like Arabic? Is this foothills? Where is this coming from? This is some quality shit here. This is some handmade quality shit. But like, this is
gourmet shit.
This is like, you know, this is not an easy life, but this is a manifestation of la passion, right? But like, what's next? How do you up this? What's V2.0 of this?
It's a continual pursuit of improvement and growth. Like, all of this came because I have, and I don't exactly know where this came from, but I have this desire to always be developing, growing, improving. Not in business, not in my body, but in life, and leveling up in some way, of understanding things better, of finding something that I'm lacking in and saying I want to get better at doing that. And the way that the world works is, if you get better in one thing, like training, there's going to be a lot of transferable skills that help you in business. If you're open-minded enough to be able to cross-transfer those skills across, where one thing that I really do believe is that if something is not actively being worked on and it's not growing, it's not staying stagnant. I mean, it is staying stagnant, but stagnation is death as well. Stagnation is actually it's going backwards. That's in business, that is in a relationship, in a friendship, in training. Okay, if you're not actively stimulating growth in your body, yeah, you could say, oh, I'm staying the same. No, you're actually going backwards. If you're not working on your relationship with your partner, you're in a good place right now. Yeah, but you actually, every single day that you're not working on improving things, it's actually going backwards, even though you think you're comfortable. Same in business. If you're not actively thinking about the next content post, the next stream of revenue you're going to create, the next online course, the next whatever else it may be, because you're comfortably sitting in this, what you might call a golden goose egg or whatever it might be, it's actually going backwards. Your business is actually failing at that point. It's going backwards. There is no time in any aspect of life to not be pursuing growth and improvement. So there are always going to be areas in my life that I feel like I can improve upon more. Like for this, people I know for sure, like this is goals for many people to be like, I've got this gym, I've got my own home space, fantastic. And I'm like, how can I make this even better? What's missing from here? How can I level that up even more? Or maybe I say, you know what? I've achieved something that's actually going to be sustainable in terms of like, this is, if I was to let this be stagnant for a few months and just keep working in it, it's not going to go downhill significantly. What other areas of my life can I work on? Maybe I can work more on the way that I balance this with family. I can balance this relationships. I can balance this with seeing my friends more, or just having a life outside of pure work. Maybe I can take up hobbies. Like I can spend more time on myself and doing things that I really enjoy. You know, I can look into things like Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I can start doing things like skateboarding or playing guitar more, or learning a new language because I've always wanted to do those things. Where have I not been working on growth as much? Let's direct it more towards there. And that's what this whole balance thing really is about. And I think a lot of people in this industry, they get so caught up and consumed by just the one thing. I just got to get more clients into my business. I've got to build online business. I've got to just work on knowing my craft more and more and more and more and more. And yeah, you can, but at the expense of what? At the expense of what? So where is this going to go now? Like this whole space? I honestly can't tell you. I don't know. Like it's going to be a point of, we're going to create, Kevin and I, as much content as we can to spread a useful, helpful, entertaining message to the masses, to bring exposure to people like yourself, or to anybody else who I really believe in, and I think, yeah, this is a good person. They have a good message. They come from a good background. I'm able to say, hey, look, come in here and use this space. And is that going to financially line my back pocket? I couldn't care less. You know, like I said to you before, if you want to use this space to create content, like, go for it. I don't care. Like it's, and you don't even have to do any branding for Ganbaru. I don't care about that. You can use a blank wall and create content out of it. I couldn't care less. I was like, I'm in a position now where I can now, in some way, give back. But I just really am excited to be able to see, what could you create now if you had this at your disposal? Because I know that you have this passion that has to get out there more and more and more and more. And the only thing that's been limiting you is resources. Well, you have those resources now. Do what you want with it.
How do you celebrate?
How do you celebrate?
How do you celebrate? Because, like, I mean, there's moments where, like, when you sign the lease on this, or you sign the mortgage on this, you sign the fucking deed, you got the pink slip to this bitch. You're different. You live a different life now. Like, there's these, and I can think of like 3 or 4 off the top of my head where, like, you've got the news and it's kind of scary. Like, holy fuck, like this is happening. And like maybe for me it was doing some work with Ben. For you maybe that like having courses with John, where it's like that this is a manifestation of a lot of hard work. There's more hard work to come. How do you celebrate?
Good question. Like, there are definitely moments at each one of those pivotal times. So I was like, I'd sit there for a moment just on my own, or maybe with a friend, and be like, I am personally just so proud to be able to look back at what I've been able to achieve in, like, working with John Meadows. Like, that was a dream come true. That was like, I can't believe it. Like, when I brought Tom Platts out, and that was like 2013, 2014, I was like, I can't believe this is actually happening. This is incredible for me. But I never really got caught up in the celebratory process, because, especially more recently now, I would appreciate it, and I'd be grateful and thankful for those. I'm like, yes, that's happened. Look at what I've been able to create here. But I don't ever want to get stuck and complacent in that and be like patting myself on the back and be like, yep, look at you, you've got it made now, Eugene. Not because I can't appreciate it, but more so like, I'm more excited about this mental state of happiness that I've been able to foster for myself. And all of these things are contributors to my mental state of being like, I am happy, which I haven't been able to say for I don't even know, my entire life. Where, like, I do my lives on Instagram, and a common question I get from people in my DMs and inbox is, do you ever get really flat? How do you maintain so upbeat? How do you, like, is this an act? And I can honestly say in the past, it might have been. Like, years ago, even maybe 6 months ago, it might have been a forced effort to be able to put on a persona, and I'd experience hardship, and it'd really get me down, but I'd draw away. But now, I don't have those one-off celebrations, but every single day is a good day. I literally wake up and I'm so excited to be able to do whatever mundane task it might be of creating content or writing an article. And that's my celebration. Because every single day I get to celebrate of like, this is so much fun. Like, I get to live a dream, not in this space, but I get to just do what I want and live the way that I like to live my life on my terms, and spread something that I can see is impacting people so positively. And yeah, it's a daily celebration.
Do you find there's one piece of advice you give people more often than others?
One piece of advice. I would say that one important, I don't know if this is the one piece, but I think this is something that sprung to my mind when you said that. So I'm going to go with it and say it's probably the most important, if it came top of mind, is to work on becoming as self-aware as you can. Understanding what's driving your behavior, how are you currently feeling, understanding what's driving your emotional state, and controlling your reactions. When you hear bad news, when you hear good news, when you hear neutral news, being aware of how you're currently feeling at the moment, which sounds like kind of foo-foo and fluffy, like, oh, there's not really much depth to that, but like a better way to think of it would be something like meditation. Like, I don't know, do you do much meditation yourself?
Not in the conventional sense. Like, not in like the...
You sit there for 10 minutes and headphones on and do the app. Yeah.
No. I can't. And, I've been exposed to that, and it was in the condensed version of that practice, like the very concentrated version of that practice, I've been able to derive the benefit or understand, okay, here's the benefit of this. Ben, I know Ben. I tripped over that fucking large fucker sitting cross-legged at 4:30 in the morning in the middle of the kitchen when I went to go get a glass of water. I thought there was a giant kangaroo bear or something in the middle of the kitchen in Manly Beach, but it was him, and he introduced me to this idea. And the awareness is the first step to becoming like self-conscious about kind of your own thoughts. But like that practice I couldn't do in that isolated sense. But when we train, like I refer back to that quote, like, being able to sit alone with your own thoughts, like that's training for me, right? But it's training. It's sitting on an airplane. Like for me, and all this travel, you sink or swim, right? Like you said, it's like that has become meditative. When I'm in that country where my phone doesn't work and I don't speak the language, and like I'm done the course, I'm sitting at my place, I don't know where to get food, like that's meditative for me. Like the points that are super stressful, like I find that to be where it's like you can react and freak out, or it's like, but I find just putting myself in those positions where I need to display some level of stoicism, a display of some level of awareness. It's very easy to me to sit in a room with all the lights off and ignore stimulus and see what's going on behind the scenes. It's not easy to do that when you're in the subway in Manhattan and you're trying to get across town with your luggage because you got to catch the fucking Long Island Railway up to your buddy's place to stay there for a weekend. It's in those points where it's like I don't want to say stressed in a bad way, but there's so much input, and like if I can, it's like adding resistance to it, right? Like bring it back to training where it's like, I can sit there and fucking pump my bicep curls like a spastic with no weight because of like I can't go to the gym, but there's no resistance. So I can sit in a corner and be with my own thoughts, but there's nothing pulling me away from that. So I find like in the pursuit of driving a benefit of conventional meditation, doing it in a place where it is the least conducive to do so, on a New York subway, in the Middle East, in the Hezbollah checkpoint. It's like, that's where you're going to need it the most, man. So long answer to a short question, but yes and no. But I understand the benefit, or continuously trying to understand the benefit of that awareness leading to consciousness.
See, in the way you answered that, I guess this is my take on it, that is perfect. That is perfect. Is because you have this degree of self-awareness and understanding that you have control over how you react to things and how to process things, and you're aware of your emotions and what you want to do versus what you should do, and that's something where, meditation is not a practice that you do for 10 minutes. It is a lifestyle. It is a way that you lead your life, and that you are self-aware of the thoughts that are entering your mind, the distractions that are coming at you, the arguments, the news, the noise, and being able to filter through that and then not let it disrupt your day. Because the most precious resource is time, for one thing, but most importantly, how you're able to manage that time. And the thing that's going to get in the way of that is the distractions. And you can't expect there to ever be a perfect time where you have no distractions. You can't expect for there ever to be a perfect time for you to grow your business or to study more, to train more, whatever else it might be that you care about in life. But the way to create that is to make sure that when all this shit happens in life, it doesn't phase you. It doesn't disrupt you. It doesn't ruin your chi, or whatever you want to call it in the hippie sense. Because we lose so much time in our life because of how we react to the shit that happens to us. Because we let bad news, good news, neutral news, random events, we let all of those things derail our focus. We let all of those things take us away from what our life's task is at that point. And that's where you go through life and you're busy, but you're not productive. It's where you go through life and you're working hard, but you're not really getting much out of it because you are too distracted. And if you want to create something, if you want to go somewhere, whatever it is you want to do in life, you need to have a degree of focus. You need to you need to have the time to put in those repetitions. And they have to be quality repetitions. The only way you can do that is if you have this meditative state that's not just for 10 minutes a day, for half an hour a day, for an hour a day, but it's literally there in the back of your mind as this omnipresent force all the time. And when I first started meditating, I would do the guided meditations for like an hour or half an hour or 10 minutes a day. And it was kind of helpful because it taught me a little bit about how to understand that distractions are going to come, but don't let them derail your life. But then I started doing those sessions just to tick it off my checklist. I didn't gain the perspective of saying, like, washing the dishes should be meditative. Okay, arguing with your spouse should be meditative. Okay, you're not going to simply like,
Just so, pay attention to me.
That's not what it is, but it's about like being in control and connecting with and being aware of the emotions that you experience, the thoughts that cross your mind in that argument, in this example, and then being able to select your appropriate response and to look at that in a very logical sense and not just be so driven and derailed by that experience. And it also does tie back to the empathy. Understand their perspective. Okay, you can't understand their perspective if you are flying off the rails and reacting to them calling you a dick. You've got to understand why they're calling you a dick. And to be able to have that perspective really comes from empathizing and being self-aware. Like, maybe I am a dick. Like, that's usually what the answer is. Yeah, you are a dick, Eugene.
Yeah, and I find that reactivity is such an indulgence. Like that's a first world problem to be able to do that, to be able to have that snap reaction and like not have to think about more primitive consequences of that, because we operate at such a high level of those hierarchy of needs every day. We're never drawn into primitive situations where how you react could be the difference between life and death. Right. And like, I feel like when I wanted to double back when we were talking about the accountant and the bookkeeper and what you're really buying back with that $200 a month, like what I wanted to tie back to was time. Right. And when we talk about resources and not having resources, like time being the most scarce resource, what or who or where or what do you read when it comes to this idea of, you know, exposing yourself to the importance of the serenity that, you know, to control things you can and to not let things you can't control you. Like what do you draw from to be able to be ever present and be ever aware? What are sources that you've looked to or drawn from that have helped you train that?
That's a good one. I'm trying to work out where, like, what was the thing or the process that made me start to connect with that. When it came to using my time wisely and protecting my time, people think that it's about saying no to more things. Okay, that's the common business advice: is you got to get better at saying no. You got to stop being such a yes man, and that makes sense. It makes sense to a point, but it's not necessarily like that is chasing after the quantity of more hours. I know that if I was chasing that, there's going to be an end game. There's only 24 hours in a day. What we should be focusing on more is not how do I create more hours in the day, but how do I make sure that the 1 hour I spent on that task was as productive as possible. Like in the gym. You could spend 4 hours in the gym, or you could spend 1 hour. Okay, like if you found a way to make that 1 hour session or that 20-minute session as productive in terms of tissue trauma, of stimulus on the body, if it was as productive as 4 hours, fuck yeah, I'm going to do that. I'd rather do 20 minutes in the 4 hours. As much as I love training, if we're looking at efficiency, you can get more out of less. So I don't even know when it was that I made that connection in my brain, but I realized that chasing quantity of time had its limitations, because there's only so many hours there's only 24 hours you can realistically get out of a day. But what is literally endless is your ability to get a lot of quality out of that quantity. You can always become more efficient at what you're doing. You can always get that work done in a better way, in a faster way, whatever it was. And then you can look at things like, hey, what if I outsource this 1 hour to somebody else? Then of course that's creating more quantity as well. And then you get the best of both worlds. But there's no point in creating more quantity of hours for yourself if they're not used productively in the first place. Because then you got 24 hours in a day to go train. Like, is that really going to be a productive workout? It might be, I don't know, but I would rather focus on making sure each hour I spend in the gym is as high quality as possible. And so the next question is, okay, Eugene, you got me sold on this quality idea. How do I make each hour I spend on whatever task it is, how can I make it as productive as possible? And then it ties back to not being distracted. It ties back to that meditative process of when I'm working on writing up an article, there are plenty of distractions. There are plenty out there, but having that awareness of and that ability to not let each distraction derail me, each notification, each email, each message, each phone call, each thought that I create in my own mind, not letting each one of those things derail my focus is powerful. And that's what we need to be nurturing and be trying to work on more. What has helped me the most with that is prioritizing a lot more leisure time, like a lot more downtime, where the same way that I'd book into my calendar a training session, a doctor's appointment, I would book in time to write my content or to film something, or for Kevin to come in, we're going to create something. I would book in time to say, between this time and this time, this is my socializing time. This is my time where I'm open to go out for lunch with a friend. This is my time where I'm going to read the fiction book that I enjoy. Not the non-fiction nerds, but actually I'm going to read something that I enjoy. This is when I'm going to play the guitar. This is when I'm going to go skateboard. This is when I'm going to go do the things that I really enjoy doing, because it gets me out of this one-track mind, focusing on just nerding out all the time, and it creates a subconscious sense of urgency. Because then I'm like, fuck, I've only got 1 hour to film this video. I better nail it. I've only got half an hour to write this article. I better nail it. I've only got 1 hour to whatever it is, and then you find ways to become a lot more productive in that time, because you're not giving yourself more time. You're forcing yourself to, again, adapt or die in that situation. And that was big for me, because also, again, you could very easily, instead of prioritizing leisure time, just prioritize other productive tasks. But I found that leisure was so important, because it is so different to what we're used to. Like having some playtime, having some relaxation time, it refreshes your brain. So you can come back to your work and your brain is now fresh. What if you just switched tasks from writing an email to now writing your next course, to now filming your next course? Yeah, you're doing 3 different tasks. You're switching between them. You're giving them 1 hour urgency tasks each, but your brain is always in a certain pattern all the time. You're going to get diminishing returns. Because there's only so many reps you can do in something. There's only so many reps you can get out of anything in life before you start getting diminishing returns, before your form goes to shit. Your form going to shit in this context is, yeah, you spent an hour trying to string 2 words together in front of a lecture, trying to get this out on video, but it was shit and it was wasted. You were better off in that 1 hour, spending that 1 hour going skateboarding, playing the guitar. You were much better off going to do that. And do it knowing that it's actually going to help your business work. You were better off spending that 1 hour not writing up the syllabus for your pre-script level 2. You were better off spending that 1 hour for your business taking Kayla out for a nice meal. You are so much better off doing that. Trying to translate that to a business owner when all they know is work, hustle, 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 Gary V, all of that kind of stuff, it's so challenging. And this is honestly the only way I can tell people, this is what's allowed me to create this. That is what's allowed me to create this. That is what's allowed me to be able to not just have fancy things, but to actually grow into the person who knows how to handle and manage this kind of stuff. Because yeah, if you could snap your fingers and be given all of this stuff, great, you'd love that. But the reality is, unless you actually go through the process of learning how to acquire that stuff, how to retain it, how to maintain it, it's going to be very transient and fleeting when you have everything that you could have hoped and dreamed for. You have to do the reps. You can't just drug your way to a world-class physique or world-class level of strength. You have to do the reps still.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's like how you do one thing is how you do everything. Right. And I love, and again, the parallels to training, it's like it's never done.
Right.
Right. And just like if we follow like your chronological story up the mountain, it's not a straight path. It's always a circumambulation towards something that's more perfect or just been better or improved.
Yeah.
And like in the way you describe that, you can see, because you circle now and the circles get shorter and tighter, but the obstacles as you reach that elevation become much more harder to overcome. But as you do that, you become that much closer. But the pursuit is, in some ways, it's an incomplete pursuit, as you'll never get to the end. But that's kind of the point. And I think like that lateral thinking from training, that's something that becomes ever present the second you first. Like when I was 15, I wanted to become Mr. Olympia. At 16, I realized probably not the cards, right? So it's like, how else do I express this passion? And then it's just been this upward spiral of like, basically almost falling off cliff edges and the entire time. Sure. But each one of those opportunities affords you another learning, like another opportunity to learn. And then as you get closer and closer, things start to piece together easier and easier.
For sure.
Just as like an expression of your experience wherever you are on that mountain.
Exactly. Yeah. I think that's a very important thing is, every single step of the way you're going to have a lot of very painful and very negative setbacks. And it's how you frame that and say, yeah, I got fucked over in business. I lost all this money to this shady business partner. And you can get caught up and you can hold a grudge. And that can take you down to the rest of your days. Or you can say, yeah, that was a $50,000 business lesson of me getting fucked over in that context. Now I can better navigate through my experience. I can navigate the next big thing. And hey, I'm so grateful that it only cost me 50K, or it only cost me 5K, or it only cost me my meat in powerlifting, whatever it was, as opposed to costing me something much worse, because there's always potential for these bad things to become terrible things if they didn't, I guess, blow up when they did. Like, that's not even naming any specific circumstance, but I think every single negative circumstance you can relate back to that and say, yeah, I was shitty about it at the time, but I can definitely say that out of that negative experience, a lot of positivity came from it. Assuming that you had the right frame on that and you didn't hold a grudge around it.
Well, in the conversation of time,
yeah,
and being sensitive to your time, man, I really appreciate you sitting down having this chat. I think this is, it's hard to get a candid view into the behind the scenes of what makes all this, and I think a lot of people they get lost in the posts and the double tap and the likes and the subscribes and all that social stuff. And I think because you are so passionate about what you do and you put in the requisite reps to get here, some people might think it's easy. So I appreciate you taking the time, as it is such a valuable resource, to be able to highlight kind of the bumps in the road that make this possible.
It's my pleasure. Like I said, I think I said this live on. Let's get it on camera. Let's get it on the audio. But you are one of the few people in the industry who I really, really look up to. Not because of your knowledge, not because of how smart you are with the big 17-syllable words, but more so your perspective as a human, where you're an intellect. You're someone who really understands a lot of these other variables to like personal development, and that is why you're able to do what you do. You're very reflective, and you have this mindset that is very, very unique, and that's why I know like you already have created a lot of incredible things. I know you're going to create even more incredible things because of not the knowledge or because of the influence that you have, but because of who you are as a person. So it's an absolute honor to me for you to invite me onto the podcast.
Dude, honor's mine, man. I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
I really appreciate it.